Imagine it's April 1865. The war's ended, but the ashes of battle still smolder across a shattered nation. In Richmond, Virginia, Lee's surrender seals a painful chapter and sparks an even more complicated story about what America chooses to remember and what it buries. How do you stitch a country back together when the wounds run this deep? And what happens when some voices are made louder while others almost vanish? That's exactly the dangerous game at the heart of race and reunion. After the guns go silent, you'd think the brutal causes of the war would dominate memory. But something else takes over, a story that reshapes how millions understand who they were fighting and why. In the 1870s, Southern elites like Jubal Early and the United Daughters of the Confederacy championed the lost cause narrative, glorifying Confederate soldiers as heroic defenders of states' rights, not slave masters. This romanticized tale spread through monuments, novels, and public ceremonies, turning defeat into a kind of noble martyrdom intended to heal sectional wounds but at a steep moral cost. Think of memory like a custom-made quilt, patches of stories stitched together, but the quilter chooses which pieces show. The lost cause was that quilter picking tales that glorified white Southern valor while sewing over the harsh realities of slavery and rebellion. This selective storytelling shaped identity, overshadowing uncomfortable truths with comforting myths. The payoff: white Americans North and South found common ground in this sanitized memory. But this unity came at the cost of African Americans' experiences, whose stories were excluded or suppressed. This racial trade-off created a fractured national memory, locking race and reunion in a painful codependent embrace that echoes today. The North and South had to face the wreckage, but what they chose to commemorate reveals much more than shared grief. It's about what the nation wanted to forget and whose sacrifices got erased. Memorial Day began right after the war as a solemn tribute to fallen Union soldiers in places like Waterloo, New York. But as the years passed, the holiday morphed into a platform that honored white soldiers from both sides, glossing over the reasons behind the conflict. This shift revealed a national hunger for reconciliation, even if it meant forgetting what the war was really about. Veterans' memoirs painted heroic portraits of valor and brotherhood between North and South, but rarely mentioned African American soldiers or the fight to end slavery. Their stories became the default memory, a dramatic battlefield epic that deliberately sidelined emancipation's radical social promise, turning a war about freedom into a battlefield folklore. Meanwhile, African Americans celebrated emancipation anniversaries and fought to keep the legacy of Black participation alive. But these voices were marginalized in mainstream culture, locked out of the official memory. This erasure wasn't accidental. It carved out a whitewashed narrative that enabled reunion without justice, leaving racial wounds festering beneath the surface. The new American story felt peaceful on the surface. But underneath, the separation of Black and white memory was more than just history. It was a living wound shaping society. By the early 20th century, public spaces, ceremonies, and textbooks echoed the segregated memory of the Civil War. White Americans shared a triumphant reunion tale, while Black Americans kept alive the struggle for freedom and justice. This memory segregation mirrored Jim Crow laws, embedding racial division into the very fabric of American society. The painful era of Reconstruction, when freed people attempted to claim citizenship and rights, was buried under a narrative that painted it as a failure and chaos. This erasure helped justify white supremacist backlash, ensuring national healing came at the tragic price of denied justice and lost opportunity. Blight shows us that these entwined memories aren't just history, they're living forces that shape race relations today. The costs of reunion without justice remain painfully visible, from systemic racism to debates over monuments, demonstrating that how we remember can either wound or heal a nation. Back in April 1865, stitching the torn nation back together wasn't just about peace, it was about which stories got told and which got buried. Blight makes it clear, a story of reunion that silences racial justice leaves the deepest wounds open. Next time you pass a monument or hear a Memorial Day speech, ask yourself whose story is missing. Try this: seek out those hidden voices. Your understanding of America's past and future depends on it. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.